From Little League to the big leagues and everywhere in between. From one stage to another. Passion is my middle name. I'm JJ Davis. This is In Focus. Hello, and welcome to our first edition of In Focus. I'm your host, JJ Davis. And you know, I think it's only fitting that for our first show, we focus on the first professional volleyball team in the state of Nebraska. And how about the first Pro Volleyball Federation champions, the Omaha Supernovas? So, without further ado, how about this? We've even got the trophy and the original pom-poms. I ripped those off from the first game, Coach.
Classic.
Joining me right now, as you can see, is the interim head coach of the Novas, Laura Kuhn. Not a bad gig.
Yeah, not a bad start for this Pro Volleyball League, this whole thing.
I got to ask you the question, obviously. Have you been texting more or sleeping more?
Funny, I couldn't wait to sleep. My body obviously doesn't want me to sleep. I have been awake in like the middle of the night and I get up and I just make a pot of coffee. I just do things. It's crazy. Last night was actually a good night of sleep. But
all right, $1 million question. How does the team spend? What do they do with the first prize of $1 million?
That money is well earned and it's theirs as a team.
All right, that's what the coach says, but what's going to happen to it?
They split it up. What they do, what they want to do with their shares of it, that's on them.
What about Sydney Hilly? She gets $10,000 for the MVP. Does she get the same amount?
Yes. That's all their decision as a team. They decide the shares and how they split it up. What they do with that money, I'm sure they're all going to spend it different ways.
Spoken like a true coach. Now, a true coach, like a true broadcaster, very nomadic. Mm-hmm. We've lived a lot of different lives in a lot of different places. Right side hitter at Georgia Tech. He won 3 ACC championships. Mm-hmm. And then you've spent coaching at 4 different stops. And now you're here in Omaha. Mm-hmm. How'd you get here?
I feel like Midwest is kind of the core of who I am. I'm from Ohio. I was at Kansas for 7 years, and I feel like I kind of became an adult there. When did I get there? I was 28. So 28 to about 38, 10 years, something like that. And then I went to Texas for 5 years. But I really do. I think I grew up there in Kansas, but it was the people. I left Miami and went to Kansas. I'm like, who leaves the water?
But how did you hear about this place and this opportunity?
So I was actually overseas. I was traveling. I was seeing some of my old teammates, friends, family, and Shelton, my former coach that recruited me to Georgia Tech, called. And he was talking about this opportunity and how he was interviewing, and he wanted to do it with me because it was kind of where I had rooted myself in Kansas. It was up in this region. And so as we talked and I learned about it, I was like, yeah, I want to do this for the sport. I want to do this for pro volleyball.
It's about time.
Yes, to set this up.
It's about time.
So I was all about doing it because I wanted to be on the ground level first year and just get the roots of what it was going to take and to help the sport.
So in the beginning of that first year, your mentor, one of your mentors, Shelton Collier, the Novas go 0-2, and he's replaced by you. What happened?
Well, we were 1-1 because we had beat San Diego 3-0. But I think it, just like any startup, there was restructuring of this organization, and they came to both of us together, and they just talked to us about him moving into more of a ambassador role within the organization and me being the head coach as we kind of worked through the season.
Laura, how tough was it?
It was. It was challenging because none of us had that vision. None of us saw that happening or coming. And so I always talked about resilience with this team. Through our training camp, through the preseason, all the players that we had here, our coaching staff, we had never all worked together. So all of it was growing. All of it was growing pains, and there was a lot of challenges. And that transition that week was a lot. There was a lot of moving pieces.
Emotional.
Yep. But we all stuck in it together, and we had multiple meetings, multiple player meetings, and it was at one point you just make the decision and you're all in together.
All right, so-
I've said it since day one.
All right, so the team goes on to win the trophy, et cetera, et cetera. What was the number one attribute that you think you brought to the team that enabled it to maybe relax, do what it did?
When I'm coaching, I always stay very even keeled.
You're not a screamer.
No, I mean, I could get mad at times for sure,
Right.
but I do think time and place, like the timing of when to do those things. And there's so much momentum and emotion in volleyball.
Correct.
So I've always just been, my mom always says, you're like watching paint dry. Why would I want to come watch you coach? You do nothing. I'm like, yeah, they don't need more emotion. Players don't need to feel or see what I'm thinking and what we're feeling. So I do my best to try to stay just even keel for them. And it's just very matter of fact. But it also is very team to me. I am 100% a relationship person and giving to the team. And how do you make someone else better around you?
So perchance we could say you might have been the right sauce at the right time.
I think timing is the key to a lot of things in life.
We've learned that in life, haven't
Yes, timing is key.
Talking about the team, timing, 10 states represented, 2 from Minnesota, Florida, 3 international players. But we've got some local flavor, right? Gina Mancuso-Provsowski, Jen Shaven-Landsman. Gina played at Nebraska. I remember Jen when she played at Harlan, then at Iowa State. So you've got a little bit of everything.
We had a great mix. I mean, it was a melting pot, whether it's experience and players that had been playing pro for almost 20 plus years, other players that are right out of college. And so to me, that's what I thought it was so cool to see the interactions and the relationships that were built throughout the season, because everyone was coming from different times, different spaces in life, but there was a special connection with this group from the start at training camp. And I've said that, and we brought practice players back due to injuries and just movement of our roster. We had the ability to bring practice players back that had left after training camp. And so for me, I think it's special to bring that personality, that talent, those people back into the same group, because it was a spark, but they'd been here with us. So that relationship had already kind of started. And so to be able to bring in those pieces and bring people back, that was very cool.
But you and I know chemistry is a big thing with any sport at any level. When did you think, we might have something here? I like this chemistry.
It was a work in progress. I mean, all season there were moments and there was glimpses of things that we had everything we need. And that was something we kept saying as a staff. We have everything we need. Team over talent, team over talent. Towards the end, when people were picking up new players and replacing people, there was a point in time where I came in and I said, unless, knock on wood, there's an injury, we do not plan on doing anything. We have everything we need. We've said it all season. I do believe that there is a dynamic and a piece to a team of that, even that in your minds, like you have to be free of mind and be able to compete and play as an athlete and have that trust.
Who emerged as your leaders, the voice in the locker room, so to speak?
Our 2 setters for sure. Even towards the end, I mean, they were seamless when we would use either of them in matches, but their leadership and the way they run the match is very different, but the way that they led the team towards the end, and I leaned on them. I grabbed them, I think, when we were in San Diego, and I just talked to both of them because that's a thankless job. And neither of them had just locked in as our starting setter, and partly on me and our staff because they were both so good in their own right and they were competing, but they also were great teammates. Their example of how to be a great teammate and how to lead is hands down the core of why we were able to do what we did. And then like Betty De La Cruz, Herstina, those players that have other experiences and have been on other teams, they were kind of voices of reason sometimes. Tori, I mean, they all had moments when they stepped up and they spoke and it meant something and people listened and the teammates respect each other, so they listen to each other.
Everybody did listen. Last month of the season, 3 sweeps, 3 zip. You only got 3 combined the first 3 months of the season. So as coaches like to say, you want to peak at the right time, and the team did.
Yes, we definitely found our rhythm towards the end. We kind of stuck with the lineup. And again, that was us talking to the team. We competed a lot during the training season. Like every practice, it was like live play, 6-on-6, and we listen to what they need. We want to know, because they're all different. So to some extent, you want to know what they need, but then you also know as coaches what we need as a team.
Right.
And so that collaboration was consistent this
Was
year.
there ever a point in the season, most teams have it, where you know you're going to slide a little bit, you're going to go through some rough times, losing streaks, etc., where the team always has to pick itself back up and truly show its character?
There was a grind. It was probably March. January, March. I'm like trying to think, because in the fall,
You've been
in
busy.
the fall,
You've been busy.
it's October. Like all the coaches, we always talked about the October grind. Like that's the middle of the season month. March was that. March was that for us in this season. And the travel was, it was a grind. I mean, there were the last 3 weeks actually kept us in a routine though, because we played, traveled, came back and practiced, and then had a match. I mean, the last 2 weeks for sure, it was almost like a 3-day, it was like a 3-day swing of like the routine that we were in.
But in the end, the grind pays off. Grand Rapids, you win. Second best hitting percentage all season, you hit 342. It's like everything came together. Was everything perchance, as they say, in system or what?
Yes, we were definitely in a rhythm. And it started, I would say it started Wednesday night. We struggled to start that semifinal. And then it was kind of a gut check. And we challenged them, always look within, look at each other. Like you have to believe. I think coming out of that match and the way that they executed and performed, the end of the Wednesday semifinal led right into how we executed on Saturday.
But in the championship match, was it more them getting exactly what you needed or more you?
It was a team. It's always a team effort. Like I think at that point, us as coaches didn't really have to say much. They were locked in. And I could tell in the locker room before we even went out, because I said to our staff, I said, I love when they're locked in. They all actually look at me. They're like engaged. I'm like, we knew they were locked in. We knew all eyes were up. They were locked in.
Is it nice as a coach not to have to make a speech?
Yeah, and this team, I mean, you don't really have to speak at pro athletes. I keep it very simple, and I would say it's pretty general. But less is always more. I've always believed less is more.
All right, now this is the lady nicknamed Bird because her father talked about her legs.
Bird legs. Calf muscles.
So how are you going to leg it into next season? The league starts with 7 teams. They're looking to expand.
Yep.
24 regular season games. What can fans hope to see next year?
We're definitely expanding. I don't think, for sure, 3 teams. There's always talk of other movement.
Right.
There's going to be, I believe we might start earlier. So our matches will start at the beginning of January and end by the end of April. So it's going to be exciting, 100%.
All right, speaking of exciting, this is it. Your last words. What do you have to say to Nova Nation? Average around 10,000 fans, the best fans in the United States. I've said it from little kids to big kids forever. Parting words for Nova Nation.
Nova Nation has been family to us. And to be able to bring this championship here and play for you guys, in front of you guys, with you guys, it was amazing. That was one of the best hands down experiences for our athletes, for this organization, for us as coaches. I mean, that match was awesome. It was just amazing, and we're so excited that we get to be in this community.
Well, Coach, I'm excited, and I know the community's excited as well for next year. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing up today.
Yeah.
We look okay, don't you think?
We clean up. We clean up nice.
As always, I will see you down the road.
Yes, for sure.
Next up, from the locker room, as I like to say, to the dressing room. Yeah, that's right. When we come back. And you know, I've always said over the years that I can truly go from the locker room to the dressing room. I've covered a lot of sports. I've done a lot of theater. So on that note, that's why I thought of this show In Focus. The first half focuses on athletics, and the second half, the stage. So on that, joining me right now is the co-artistic director of the Omaha Community Playhouse. I mean, feel like I've known this woman for a long time. Susie Baer Collins.
Hey, JJ.
Susie, how you doing?
Oh, how are you?
All right, first of all, birthday. Is anybody's birthday around here?
Mine was yesterday.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know yours was yesterday.
Get out. Yes.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to Susie.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you.
You know, I've spent so many of my birthdays in great big technical rehearsals for shows that open at the end of May.
Yes.
It's just been part of my life, and last night was no different. And I had this wonderful cast that serenaded me, and friend brought cake for the whole cast.
Say, did you get a cake?
And we got 2 kinds. Yeah.
Really?
It was awesome. Yeah.
Your favorite cake?
Oh,
Thank you. All right, now.
moving on. Cake
right.
is good.
All right.
Any
It is
kind
good.
of cake.
It is good. All right. I want you to answer this question. Over under. Have you been an actor in over 50 or 100 plays or under 50 or 100 plays? Acting.
Yeah, I would say probably close to 100.
What?
Yeah, I don't count that, but I was an actor for a long time before I started directing.
All right, now, over, under. Have you directed more than 50 plays, more than 100 plays, or under directed?
More than 100. More than 100 plays and musicals. Yeah.
Which do you prefer?
It kind of depends on the show, you know. There are brilliant plays that I have loved working on, like a kind of unknown Tennessee Williams play called Not About Nightingales. He wrote it early in his career. It's about the prison system. That was an amazing experience. On the other hand, I've gotten to direct shows like Les Mis or Ragtime or Secret Garden or right now Hello Dolly. You know, there's personalities to every show and every theater. At the Playhouse, we have 2 theaters.
Right.
We have the great big one, seats about 550.
Correct.
It's a proscenium.
I performed in the Howard Drew.
Yeah. Well, that's called the Hawks Theater, and the smaller theater is called the Howard Drew, and it seats smaller number of people, like 200, and you can kind of move the seating around and the way the stage
Do
works.
you have a favorite moment from certain plays, like a top 5 or a top 10? Or have there been so many, too numerous to name, that you can't really do that?
I'd say column B. There's a lot of moments. You know, I had a wonderful teacher once that said to me as a young director, they said, you want your audience to go away with a moment inside your show, someplace. Maybe if you're lucky, there's more than one. And I've been lucky that I felt just a few shows maybe came short of having one of those.
Right.
Yeah.
You talk about the moment. Now, I've actually performed with you in a play, Our Town.
Yeah, at the
And
Blue
I've
Barn
actually
Theater.
auditioned for you. So I got to be honest. I'm kind of nervous because I'm used to being in the room with you in the space. What kind of person are you outside the room, outside the space, the stage?
What kind of person am I? I don't know. I like my friends. I love my family. I do a lot of traveling. I love to read. I adore movies. I've been a member of Film Streams ever since they first began. It probably isn't a week goes by I don't see at least one film there. I am not a cook. I don't know how to garden. I do manage to have help taking care of my house and my yard. Otherwise, I'd be a shambles.
Yes. Some of us are lucky that way.
Well, anyway. And I spend a lot of time away from the theater, seeing theater, reading about theater, researching shows I'm about to direct. That's a big part of my life, a big part of my work, even when I'm not in the building itself, in the Playhouse.
We talk about it being a big part of our lives. I try to explain to people the theater bug, if you will. It's just in you. I can't explain it. The time comes, you got to do something. You got to be comfortable being uncomfortable auditioning. It's just in you. It's a theater bug. Can you explain it to people what it is?
Well, I had another teacher who told me if you could possibly do anything else with your life, don't hesitate, please do it. It's not for everyone because, like you said, there's a lot of rejection. But I imagine in sports, it's the same.
Correct. Trust me, there is.
Yeah, and a lot of it is opinion. And a lot of it is one person's kind of concept for a particular show, and they're asking you to stand up in front of them, and you couldn't be more vulnerable, and you're being asked to recite a monologue.
Yeah, but Susie, when did you know that you could do that?
7th grade.
You got a story?
Sure. my mother was insisting that I spend a summer in summer school because she really thought it was important for my future that I take typing. So to soften the blow, she also signed me up for a drama class. And it was a class during the summer at a junior high where, yeah, I guess I was about 12 or 13, and we had to audition for this play about this little boy whose sister was bugged because he was always spying on her. It was called Beanie's Private Eye. So I'm in the hallway waiting for my turn to read some of these lines from the show, and other girls are going in before me for the part of Beanie's sister, whatever. And I don't know, something happened. Somebody called me. Her first line is, so-and-so slams the door and says, "Mother, you've simply got to do something about Beanie." Oh, sure I do. So I walked into the audition room, and before anybody said anything to me, I slammed the door, and I came in, and I stared at one of the people that was auditioning or watching the auditions, and I said, "Mother, you've simply got to do something about Beanie." And I sat down in a huff, and then I kept reading the scene. And it was an instinct, and I got cast, and I got the part. And we had to do everything. We built the set, we learned our lines, we did the show. And I remember my mother picking me up, and my mother had a degree in speech and drama from Northwestern, but she married my dad after the war and never really was able to practice anything with it. And I said, I was in rehearsal, and I said, "What do you do? I know what to do when I'm talking, somehow. I think I know. What do you do when someone else is talking?" And she said, "What are you doing right now?" And she was talking to me and asking me what I was doing. I guess, "I'm looking at you. Are you raising your eyebrows?" "Not right now. Are you?" And she was asking me all these questions.
My gosh.
Yeah, that was the start of it.
My gosh, that's a moment you'll never forget.
Sure, sure. And then also when I was 13, I saw a very young actress named Swoozie Kurtz. She became a very famous actress, but she was 13 years old, and she played a 13-year-old in a play that I saw in Cincinnati. And I thought, I want to be her.
Well, you have probably been her, and
Well,
so many others, in so many ways.
had a good time.
As you've gotten older, having a good time. Mm-hmm. How'd you get to Omaha?
Well, I went to later high school and college in Lincoln, Nebraska. My parents lived in Lincoln. But I went away. I was dying to get away. I went to New York for a while. I went to Atlanta. I went to both those cities 2 different times. Eventually, I had a television show in Atlanta.
Yes, you told me, a children's show.
Yeah, for WTBS Superstation,
Yeah.
right? Ted Turner. So they were just starting cable networks. This was like 1980. And he needed, for this Superstation, to have a certain amount of children's programming, a certain amount of public television. So he hired this wonderful woman who was going to create this kid show. And she cast my friend. And at that point, I was living in New York. And my friend called and said, "They've hired some woman to be on the show with me, but she can't be here for a while."
This happens all the time in theater. It's always the other person that really wasn't expecting it or looking for it.
Oh, maybe. Anyway,
Yes.
he said, "She can't be here right away. Can you come in and get some footage in the can so we can sell to some sponsors?" So I came down to Atlanta. I shot with my friend for 2 weeks. We were pretty much making up a show as we went. And the producer, my dear friend Mary, said, "You know, I don't think I want to wait for this woman from Boston. I think I want you." And she said, "So if you're in agreement, we just need a writer." And at the time, I was married to Carl Beck, and he was in New York. And I called him and I said, "I need you to be a writer. You're going to get a phone call in about 5 minutes." And he was a writer, but not for television ever, you know. And they hired both of us, and we moved from New York to Atlanta. We were there for 3 years. We did a lot of television, and I missed the theater. And there would be times we'd be in production, right? We'd have a 13-week bunch of shows, and then they'd go into reruns. And then we'd be having to scramble at the station for a job. So I worked in post-production. I was a Chiron editor. Eventually, we missed the theater, and we told Ted we were going to take this offer that was coming from the Omaha Community Playhouse. We had worked there before as jobbed-in members of the Nebraska Theater Caravan.
Right.
And so Charles wanted to hire Carl, my husband at the time, to be his associate because he was about to undergo this huge renovation of the Playhouse.
Right.
It's going to be a big capital campaign, and he was going to need all his time. So we moved to Omaha with a 4-month-old baby in 1983.
My gosh.
And Carl started working for the Playhouse. And I started working part-time for the Rose. At the time, it was called the Emmy Gifford Children's Theater. And I also worked for a now defunct organization called Metro Arts. It was a city arts council that no longer exists.
But you were at the Playhouse then for what, 27 years?
Yeah,
And you left?
probably now it's more like 32.
Yeah. Can you believe it?
It goes like that. It does. You know, that there's lots of rewards, though. Like, I can remember these kids, or these young people who came to work for the Nebraska Caravan, and I was their director, and it was maybe their first job out of Webster Conservatory or something. And now that person has gone on to be a 2-time Tony winner, Norbert Leo Butts, or there's a young man named John Lloyd Young who won a Tony for Jersey Boys. He was a kid actor at the Playhouse, and he attributes the Playhouse to giving him a start in the theater. And so we're about to turn 100 years old.
I know.
And
I feel like I'm about to turn 100 years old.
yeah, you got a lot more.
In the end, your journey, because as you and I know, broadcasting, theater, the journey. Sum up your journey, your legacy.
I think somebody else has to do that for me. I don't necessarily know how to do it. I love getting a theater project to work on, whether I don't get many parts anymore as an actor. That part of my life is a little less happening than it used to. But I love getting a project to direct. And I'm grateful that my life has gone in so many different directions, and none of it by me was very well planned. So someone like me would never be hired now at the Playhouse because I wouldn't have had the credentials at the time.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you've always had the credentials, and I want to thank you
Yeah, my pleasure.
from the bottom of my heart.
Sure.
I'd give you a hug, but we're a little too far away. Thanks for coming on.
Oh,
and of
I
course,
just enjoyed it.
I know I will see Susie down the road in some space or another, and we'll see how it goes. So I'd like to thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody for helping me on my first podcast called In Focus. And as I always like to say, I'll see you around town.